going here. So there's our recording. And welcome everybody as you're coming into the room. We're going to be rethinking the survey experience and scale data analytics by using xAPI. We have Amy Parent with us today. I'm just going to give a few more minutes as I see some people kind of coming into the room, as happens with Zoom when we open it up. It's not instantaneous. It just takes a few seconds. So we're going to wait for a few seconds while everybody's getting in. I hope you joined Megan for our opening session. She gave a little background about xAPI, how it all started, and their Torrance Learning's involvement, and now the Guild's involvement. So I hope you'll continue with us on this journey. I'm also on this xAPI journey myself, and Amy and I were just talking about that before, and I hope to continue my journey. So hopefully you will continue in the next cohort as well. So I'm going to go ahead and give things over to Amy, and she's going to take us on our journey. Thanks.
And I'm continuing my journey. So, and that's a little bit what I want to share with you today, with this kind of focus where I really had the opportunity to hone in on rethinking the survey and leveraging xAPI as the data model to help scale not only the experience for the learners, but also the data analytics. So enough about the title. Let's talk about what I want to share with you today. So in this demo, I'll give you a little context about the problem I was trying to solve for and how we got to this solution and why we felt xAPI was the direction to go. I'll show you how it works and what it is. And then I'll unpack a little bit about what it took to build it, and some of our different iterations, what we learned from them, where we are today, and then finally and how that worked out with data analysis and scaling that process for us. And then finally, what's next? And also want to hear ideas from you about what could be next, because I'd love to see this project continue to grow. So let's dive into the situation. So it started out with a common, problem of wanting to establish some kind of baseline about where learners are from their perceived level of skill or use of behavior in the workplace around a particular area. At Salience Learning, we have 3 academies that we've built with the help of the Torrance Learning developers, I might also say, critical thinking, strategic thinking, and generate insights academies. The problem was we took a survey approach, right? And the user experience itself was very much like a survey. It was very academic. It's like 18 questions, and it was just exhausting, and people weren't finishing it. It was a never-ending scroll. Even though it was a part of the learning journey, people would do a little bit and then move on. The other problem that we had was a content management problem with this approach. We used SurveyMonkey as the development tool for this. It was what was available, and it was what was top of mind when we first put it together. It turned out being a bit of a nightmare when it came to setting up cohorts in a digital situation for 2 reasons. We didn't collect any personal information on people. We didn't collect context information. So in order for us to even be able to tell which data belonged to which cohort, we actually had to recreate versions of this in SurveyMonkey and then bring that new URL into the learning journey so that they got the right survey and we had the data we needed for export. So the main thing we wanted to work on, from a learner-centric problem-based approach was we wanted people to get value from this. We wanted them to complete it and get something out of it that was meaningful for them. On the business side of it, we wanted to make management of it better and also the analysis process a little bit faster and simpler. So in exporting the data out of SurveyMonkey, it didn't come out in a format that you could start analyzing straight away. So we would have to align the question code with the actual question so we could actually analyzing it meaningfully without all of this text. It took us building a kind of template that queried and pulled from this tab in an Excel, spreadsheet to translate all of that data into a format so we could actually just get to this kind of visualization at the end of the day. I mean, it took us a while to build it. Once it was built, it was okay, but we still had to always go through this process of cleaning up and reorganizing the data, if you will, that this was pulling on. So not ideal. So we kind of like stepped back and we thought about, okay, well, we're using a different tool. We really don't want to use 1,000 tools to build everything that we need. We have dominKnow 1 as our content management system and our development tool, and we develop in responsive design HTML5 format. So the first obvious thing to think about was, let's get out of SurveyMonkey. Let's start building it as if it's like any other digital asset that we're building for the academies. And that just made a whole world of options open up to us, including how the experience was presented to the learner, where the data, what data we wanted to collect, how we wanted to store that data, where we wanted to store that data, and what other additional information could come along with that data. So this part, the single source LRS, the contextualized data, and being able to look up the data across cohorts in one single query, that's where xAPI really came in and was kind of the answer. And the rest of it all just made sense. So normally at this part, I pause and see if there's any questions. But if it's okay with you, I'm just going to jump to the demo so you could see it, and then I'll pause and see if there are questions before we dive into the build.
I'm not seeing any questions. We do have Q&A enabled here,
Okay.
and I was trying to figure out, but we don't seem to have a chat, unfortunately, but we do have the Q&A, so feel free to post things in the Q&A, participants.
All right, cool. Yes, please do. And if you could let me know, because I can't see it, so.
Yep, I'll do that.
All right, so here is what it looks like. Let me actually exit out of this for a sec and jump over here. Make it nice and big. Yeah, so I mean, the beauty about building the way that we build is, I mean, this doesn't have to live in a learning management system or an LXP. It can live anywhere. It's really works really nicely in a browser, as you can see. And we really just rethought the whole thing. We rethought how many questions. You can see it's a lot less questions. And we started to rethink the experience. This is version 1. I think there's lots of more opportunity, but you'll see we also changed the way we wanted people to be thoughtful about their response. And this approach actually came from Will Thalheimer's latest thinking in his latest book around how to survey learners in this sort of way. So essentially the learner, picks their choice, and we have a submit on each one. This is kind of base 1. And when the learner hits submit, this item that they chose is what actually gets sent over to the LMS. So I'll be showing you that in a bit. But it's a lot cleaner, a lot simpler, and we've already started to see our completion rates going up. So people are interacting with it more than they were in the past. So that's a good sign. And let me go back here. This is the statement format. This is just a screenshot from testing in SCORM Cloud. We coded each of those submit questions in our custom xAPI build so that we can actually query this data and separate this data out a lot easier. So I'll show you that in a bit. But it's like I answered question 2 of this pre-assessment. I answered this question of the impact assessment, etc. So how did we get there? Well, the journey actually started in partnership with Torrance Learning, in particular Matt Kluwer, who helped us start to do the early thinking on this. Zari Ozturk, who was the developer. Sorry if I'm demolishing last names. Oh, apologies. And then Leanne G, who was also a part of that thinking. So we pretty much started by rebuilding the original survey. We're like, okay, let's just work with what we have. Let's see what we can get. And we also started with the single submit concept. So the problem that we learned about really, really quickly was in doing this approach, we were actually getting statements on every single question. That was good, but even if they never interacted with it. So that was not good, right? So I could answer this question here, pick a choice, skip all of these, hit submit, and I would get a statement on each of these. The result would be 0, but I'd still get a statement. So it was really creating a noisy data collection and LRS situation for us. And it made sense. In dominKnow 1, when we built this, and this is just a little screenshot of 2 parts of that, the submit button had an action called for every single one of these questions. So when you hit submit, this occurred, which would explain why, even if people didn't pick a radio option, we would still get a statement that came through. The other thing is, you can see here, I'll point it out in a little bit, the way we didn't fully understand, I think, or we did understand, but we didn't fully know how to leverage, how to fill these custom xAPI fields out to the optimum for to scale the data analysis side of this and querying function. And I think we're still learning here. So this was the first iteration, and this is what we got as a result of that. So, I answered the object, which was the question right here, the question stem. And then here was my answer. And if I didn't answer it, it would just say 0, result 0. And then the behavior was just a reiteration of what the Likert scale options were at the time. So when we queried it, we were either querying for each one of these individuals as the object, or the parent survey term. So this led me to realize I need to step back and really actually understand how what I'm putting here in dominKnow 1 as my custom build translates into what I actually see in my queries and in my statements. So I want to give you a little bit of time just to digest this for a second. I used kind of a color coding so you could see, how what I put over here was exporting out into the statement format and the query format. So I'll pause while you guys are looking at that just for a second and see what questions are coming up.
Great. I was about to say we have a question. So question is, were there different choices to use for hosting the survey? Some organizations have MS Teams and there's forms that can be used as a survey. Would something like MS Forms be able to work, or did you use SurveyMonkey because it's easier / better to send statements from?
Yeah, so let me clarify a few things there. So when we first did this, we used the tools that we had, and at the time, the organization was using SurveyMonkey, and the mindset of this assessment was survey, right? In looking at the challenges we were having with that, getting the data, how the data exported, managing different URLs for different cohorts, we had to rethink what it was we were building. So we actually moved away from that mindset of a survey. We carried it into our development tool, Domino One. And the nice thing about Domino One is you're not stuck with one kind of experience, like a slide or a click-through experience, or next buttons or anything like that. You could just build a scroll experience if you want, as you just saw. So the reason we went with Domino One, our content development tool and our management system, was everything was already being built there. So why would we build something in a different tool unless it was a video, right? So, okay, let's build it there. And then the second reason was so we could actually manage both the data and the actual asset itself better. That's really the reason. It's not to say that you couldn't do some, like you can purchase the XA. I think SurveyMonkey does have an xAPI side to it or capability to it for additional cost. But our reasons was consolidate management and keep it simple. Does that answer the question?
I hope so. So we'll see if there's any more questions that come in, but that's it for now.
Okay, great. Yeah, so if we take a look for those of us who are still looking at learning about the code view of it, again, everything I color coded it for you so you could align with how to build the custom xAPI data call in Domino for that particular submit button, if you will, and that particular question, and then what it looks like in the code compared to the statement view. So again, the verb is pretty easy to figure out. Here's an example of where I was saying if they didn't answer it, you got a response of 0, which is helpful if you knew to look for that. And then here is where you saw the name showing up, which translates into the object in the statement. And then finally, the description, which is additional context that can be helpful. So at this point, we're like, okay, attempt number 1 got this. So how can we actually get statements only when people submit and only for the option that they submitted or selected? So that was the next thing. So I stepped away and backed up to the one question, like, can I send a statement with one question, and what does that look like? And that's kind of like where we ended up for this fall cohort situation. So now when you look at the submit button, it's only that button calls and sends an xAPI statement based on what they put here for only this question, right? So we got away from that one submit button just for now until we could sort this out. And we changed, in having learned how what you put over here in the custom xAPI data fields, we changed the strategy so that we could the queries could be a lot easier and simpler. And then also the exports and the ability to analyze that data would be a lot faster and easier. So you'll notice that, I'll move to the next screen. You notice that, things like the verb didn't change. We knew the verb to use, etc. The response is a variable that we built in the drop down, gave it a name, and then basically what we're saying is record whatever they chose in this drop down. And then the name was the big differentiator for us. So now when you look at the statement, it says, rather than Amy parent answered, I defined an optimal outcome. Now what we get is Amy parent answered Q1 of strategic thinking post-assessment, for example, or it might say Q1 of strategic pre-assessment. So the queries can be, I could just query the Q1s if I want and do an export just on Q1 responses, or I can query for the whole post-assessment on strategic thinking and get all of the results per actor and per cohort. So just a quick breakdown here, you can see how, again, this response here comes out in the code here. I chose this answer in the dropdown. And then the rest of the statement is built out in the code. So verb answered, object Q1, Q1, and then the description, which is now the question. So I can, in the code itself, I can just double check which question that was and if that's the one that I want, which is really nice. Okay. And in the query build, this is the export. Again, verb, object, and result, what I chose in the dropdown, and then that extra description, which is called behavior in this particular LRS, so that I can cross-reference which question it actually was for analysis. So before I move on to taking a look at how this export then moved our analysis process forward, are there any other questions coming up with how we actually got to this build and what it took to build?
I don't see any other questions, but if anyone has anything, make sure you type it in that Q&A panel and we'll be able to see it, and then we'll ask Amy.
Okay. All right, so this next part is, all right, so how does this, for the rest of the title, how did this scale your data analysis? Well, now that query that I just showed you, which I built the query in Learning Locker in this particular case, I just hit an export button and it exports a CSV file, which I bring into Excel. And it brings it into Excel exactly how you saw it on the prior screen. It brings it in just like this with the other information about the actor and cohort and stuff like that. So I do a little bit of cleanup. You know, some people sometimes submit more than once. So, you know, we remove duplicates and things like that. But we also then break the object up. So just remember the object, oops. The object is called Q2, question 2 of the strategic thinking post-assessment, right? So now I can break these up into individual data points, just using the separate text tool in Excel. And now I can actually filter on a pivot table by question, by academy, whether it's pre or post, and then even by the cohort. So we go from having to reorganize the data like we did in SurveyMonkey to it already coming in organized and really just having to clean it up and click a few buttons to get there, to another click, which creates a pivot table, and it works really, really nicely for creating a nice clean pivot table and generating the visuals that we need to do the comparison that we are asked to do for this particular need. So it's a very, this is all, once this is all built, it's kind of like a template. So you just when you update the data tab, you refresh the pivot table and everything in it refreshes, including the graph. So we've gotten as close as we could to an automated analysis of this data to date. And the cool thing is, if you know nothing about Excel or pivot table, there's just like a zillion how-to videos out there on YouTube, and just watch them and you'll be able to do it pretty easily. So that, in a nutshell, is how we went from wanting to do a pre and post survey using that survey mindset to rethinking it as just a digital asset, collecting inputs from the learner and leveraging xAPI as the data model to do that. And from a very manual and intensive reorganizing in data and setup of data so that we could analyze it, to a very simple cleaning exercise and a refresh to get us the visualizations that we need. So what's next? Well, these are just some of my ideas. We're not done for sure. I mean, this is version 1, it's working. So the next questions are like, well, how do we make the UX even better? Like, how do we improve this experience and still make it not feel like a survey, right? How do we rethink the statements and make our statements stronger, and also even better in terms of how they can be the queries can be improved and structured. And then also, how can we start automating some of this, which if there's anybody here today, I may have even talked to you about this problem in harnessing data and automating and dashboards and things like that. So that's where we are, and that's what I've been working on. And thanks to the team at Torrance Learning who helped Matt and Zari and Linda, or Linda and Leanne, for supporting the initial work on this.
Well, Amy, that was a lot of food for thought and great showing us how you demonstrated everything. I feel like I know a little bit more, which is great. But we did have a question come in. Okay. So your approach here, the question is, how does this approach, I'm assuming what you showed us, gather more or better data compared to using a traditional survey tool and downloading all the responses in SurveyMonkey and analyzing the data in Excel? How do they compare?
Yeah, so for the way that we approached the original build of this in SurveyMonkey is we weren't asking the learners to give us contextual information. Like, we weren't asking them, which cohort are you in? Which academy are you participating in? Or what's your name? So all the data was, what's the word I'm looking for? You couldn't distinguish it from different individuals or different cohorts for that matter. So that was one problem that we had, and it came from therefore, even if we didn't change the URL and we wanted to keep that way, once we had all the data, we would have no means other than a when it was submitted date, potentially, assuming we didn't have more than one cohort running, to tell whose data was whose. So that was a huge problem there. We could have added something there about tell us your name, but if you think about it from a learner perspective, that doesn't really make sense when you're already signed up. You're in an LMS in our case. Why are you asking me who I am? You know who I am. So it just didn't make sense from a learner experience for us to go from that perspective. And we wanted to keep the learner front and center. Again, it's not to say that you can't do this in other tools, but the other thing that I really liked about it is it gave us control over the data, the type of data. As you saw, let me bring you back. Hold on, so you don't have to watch me scroll. But here we go. Oh, there. All right, so this was a little bit harder for us to analyze to get to the kind of visualization that we wanted. So we had to do this whole translation exercise. SurveyMonkey does it for you, but our problem was we actually needed to do it differently than the way SurveyMonkey was presenting it. And we were hoping at the time when we did the export, we would get the counts and the numbers and the, the percentages, just like it was, showing us on the dashboard. But that's not what came out, which is why we then had to go and do this in order to replicate something that we could use in slide decks and presentations and summary reports with our clients. So that was the big difference for us. If you were doing this just internally, I think, you could probably get what you need from there, but this wasn't working for us if we wanted to consolidate. The other thing is, as we continue to grow the client experience on this, we want all the data to be available in one spot for whoever needs to view it. So doing a custom API or something like that, or building a custom portal to pull visualizations and data in from different sources was going to be a big task. And my point of view is, if I can limit the number of data models and databases that I am pulling from, I think that's a much better and easier to manage situation. So that's really it.
Okay, I hope that answers the question for the person who asked. I don't see any other questions. If you do have questions, I'm going to just